Mr. Layton's going to walk us through some player options. We're going to do the player option tracker. Are they going to opt in? Are they going to opt out? Why are they going to opt in? Why are they going to opt out? Nick Yorke is on his way to the big leagues. Tyler Glasnow, I guess, was on his way home. Dave Roberts wasn't really sure where Tyler Glasnow was on his way to, but he went somewhere after some shitty news. We're going to talk about that. We also have a certain, I don't want to call him celebrity because that would go to his head. We have a
Oh,
certain baseball certain person revolving around a ballpark, literally around a ballpark, that is leading the show for the second time, and I think as many weeks. Jack Aram, Just Baseball Show. It's presented by BetMGM on Tuesday, September 17th. We'll save the hey, how are you? What's up with McCovey Cove Dave this time? Last time we talked about him, he was Instagram bargaining with your best friend when he made his major league debut. Was like, hey, when you hit your first homer here and
yeah.
I catch it in my kayak, this is what's going to happen. And he's at it again.
Yeah, that put him on my radar, and we talked about it, and I said I'm watching him. And before people say rent free, whatever, I'm gonna do like the Eminem 8 Mile strategy here. I know he's living rent free. I get it, but every time this happens, it just furthers my aggravation on this thing. Uh, Also, the quotes are just so unreal. The ones that you brought up from the last episode, which I didn't even know up until we recorded that episode, that
Yeah.
he compared himself to Barry Bonds, saying he's played his more games than Barry Bonds
Play
technically
the
by
games.
being out there, and he has as many more McCovey Cove balls than Barry Bonds does. So that was always fun. But so now you have Elliot Ramos, who hits that right-handed home run into McCovey Cove, which we talked about in the last episode. First time a right-handed hitter has hit a home run into McCovey Cove. Very cool. I understand why Dave would be, a little bit more strict maybe on his asking for that, because it is a very historic and cool baseball, and I'm sure he's probably was aware of that and like waited a long time for a right-handed hitter to put it out there and he'd have that memento. It's just every single time now he makes up a bullshit. This has a special meaning to me. And like it's happened every single time. And he's like, I've worked very hard for this one. So respect to who's working hard. But like he told Griff that the number 56 was important to him. And that's why he was gonna have a steep asking price for Griff's ball as well. And like and I think before that with Mike Harris, there was something special about that grand slam as well. It's clearly his is just low level bargaining tactic there. Um, it's the trend here, though, right? The home run goes into McCovey Cove, and Ramos. I mean, I would very much want that. The only right-handed hitter to hit it in the McCovey Cove, like that's special. It's been such a special year for Ramos. Again, I understand the asking price being a little bit steeper, but I knew damn well that there wasn't going to be a deal struck. And guess what? There wasn't. They were too far apart. It seems like there's not going to be a deal. This was from Steven Risotto. I want to make sure I have the outlet correct. A lot of hashtags in the bio here. He's the host of the Rizzo Cast and Shutdown Inning. Um, does a good job, obviously, covering the Giants. McCovey Cove Dave says he wouldn't give the historic splash hit ball back to the Giants after he says recent negotiations didn't go well, but he would share it with Cooperstown. He would share it with them. It's my most precious ball. I've worked over 20 years for it. Um, there was never going to be an agreement there. And I just think that there's legitimate bad faith negotiations. I feel like when you're negotiating before you even have the ball, which is what he did with Griffin, and I know he's done with other players. So that's the thing. Is like it's really bizarre to me when you're reaching out to players in advance and already negotiating before you even have the ball. To
Yeah.
me, that shows your intent, and that's why he is fully leaning into the aquatic Zach Hampel thing. And I just don't think this is a guy that should be celebrated much. I'm kind of out on the ball hawking.
Kayaker.
When ball hawking to the degree where it's basically you give me something that is going to really hurt you,
Right.
or I'll just keep it. Like I'm just out on that.
So, question follow up here. Would you rather be Zach Hampel or the aquatic Zach Hampel? Aquatic sounds more fun.
Well, does Hampel ever give anything up? Like, I guess
I don't know.
he became famous for what? Like when the A was it the A Rod or was it the Jeter 3000th hit?
I
Right?
thought it was
Wasn't
Jeter 3000. Yeah.
Jeter 3000, and then they make that deal there. I don't know, like when it comes to milestones, how Hample operates, but I think the idea that you would expect the Giants to give you a parking spot for Mike Harris's ball is just bizarre. And knowing that you're going to be out there so often, like
Yeah.
you're going to get another ball that the Giants, a specific Giants player is going to. Bryce Eldridge is on the way, baby. He's already in AAA,
Right.
being fast tracked through the minor leagues. He's going to hit his first career home run. Good chance it goes out there. Then maybe that's where you can ask for the parking spot. I just feel like every single time he's just really taking the opportunity here to ask for something quite steep. And anytime you wear a shirt of like your own name on it,
Yeah.
also start to kind of lose you, or you start to lose me, I would say. Yeah, I think he's starting to show his true colors here, and whether it's the quotes from the piece, whether it's
Yeah.
the consistency here of just unreasonable asks for. And I know people are going to say like, oh well, he's a fan. He has the right to do that. Blah blah blah. Like, yeah, I get it, but like up to a certain point, especially when you are, as you said, getting more balls than anybody else, like
Right.
maybe your asking price should be a little bit more reasonable. And especially for like we're talking about a 27-year-old rookie on the Marlins. We're talking
Mhm.
about Elliot Ramos, who came out of nowhere this year to have the year that he's had. Mike Harris, who has no attachment to I think anything you're doing, and it's not even
Zero.
like a major milestone. It's just his first grand slam. Just give him the freaking ball. And I know there's been several other situations. I know players that didn't end up hitting home runs there or having that moment that
Yeah.
got DMs from Dave and were like, geez, I guess I hope I don't pull it out to right. Like he's legitimately making guys not want to pull the ball.
Actually, that
It's
might be the
it's crazy.
Giants' best case because
Yeah,
they have a guy out there that is disincentivizing pull side homers.
yeah. You want to pull the ball in the air. All the analytics show that, but and maybe that's actually working in their favor there. And that's the shortest part of the yard, right?
I think
And
so. Yeah.
lefties don't want to pull it out there anymore because if it's a notable ball, say goodbye.
But it's tough
Or say
because
goodbye to the ball or say goodbye to like your firstborn. You pick.
right. What if he just collected firstborn children? That would be brutal if that was the case. But I will say I think the wind is always blowing in from right. And correct me if I'm wrong there, but wouldn't it be blowing in off the water? It's tough. Granted, there have only been what, just over 100 balls that have been put into McCovey Cove.
Yeah.
There are a lot of pull side homers, but they just barely get out, right? They really never end up in the cove. Now we'll see some crazy, EVs, more crazy EVs than we've really ever seen. So that'll, cut through that wind. But I feel like the wind is always blowing in off the water. I will say I was pleasantly surprised to know that the guy whose identity is kayaking in one place for 3 hours a night is on Instagram. It's kind of an underdog story that that guy has social media. I would think he doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Well, yes and no, because now when you see the self-important side of it, like of course he has social media.
Right, right. It's like this is brand awareness for McCovey Cove Dave.
Yeah.
So people
We're
that walk
helping.
by, they're like, "Oh, you're that guy." Yeah.
We're helping, but I know I'm contributing to it here, but man, I mean, it's just crazy. I just think this is one of the weirder things. He's also like knocked people over, I'm pretty sure. Like it's similar to where like he's given people like difficult times. Like they're fighting over the balls. Like I'm interested to see when you have a major milestone, like a major
Yeah.
milestone. Like how is he gonna act then? But even right now, it's just crazy to see someone care this much about what they're getting in return every single time. So you know, we'll see how this progresses. I think there's going to clearly be a trend here, and I think this is going to continue to happen. And at
Yeah.
a certain point, people are going to have to say like, hey, even the people that defend it and think it makes sense, like there's got to be a certain point where it's like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. You just have a guy that's ball hawking and then
No
just
doubt.
leveraging against everybody as hard as possible for what? It just becomes a self-importance thing that I think is a little weird.
No doubt. I will also say, have you seen some of the videos of Bonds hitting some of those homers? Like these homers after 700, it feels like every single one there was a melee in the water for the ball.
Yes.
Like those are videos that fascinate me, and I know that McCovey Cove Dave was probably the one that was like throwing bows during that and submerging others. And he played more games than Bonds. So get that out of the way.
Just to give McCovey Cove's Dave's side of this whole thing too. This was a reply to the whole Braves piece.
Okay.
And he said, I prefer to keep most of the home runs that I recover from McCovey Cove as they are priceless to me. Millionaire players and teams think that they can force a paltry offer on any fan. Brave negotiator was rude and threatened me. No thanks. So that's the Dave side too.
He's above the Atlanta Braves. I'm
Yeah.
actually Team Dave now. I'm Team
Yeah.
McCovey Cove Dave.
Hell yeah.
Um, I am not Team White Sox, but I want to solve this math problem. There was a report, and it was written up on MLB Trade Rumors. I think Bob Nightingale was the first to report it that the White Sox have plans to cut payroll in 2025. You and I talked about that right before we hit the record button. I think that is a deceptive headline.
Yeah.
It sounds like, oh, our players cost too much. We got to trim. The reasoning for that is the photos and the videos that you have seen on social media of guaranteed rate field before first pitch or during the game. There's nobody there. Nobody's watching these games. It is the worst team of the modern era. They need to play above 500 ball for the next week and a half to secure a record that is better than the 1960 something Mets when they went 40 and 120. They're not going to do that. They're going to be the first team in the modern era to finish with fewer than 40 wins in a season. The Chicago White Sox are the worst team that we have literally ever seen since 1901. The fact is, nobody wanted to watch them on TV. Nobody wanted to go to the ballpark. They lost a ton of money. It was a, quote, substantial loss in revenue. So now I want to play the game. How do you compensate for this substantial loss in revenue? It actually looks a little bit easier than I
Yeah.
was thinking it would be because Yohan Moncada makes 24.8 this year. He's set to make 25 next year. I did not realize that that was a club option at 25. There is a $5 million buyout. So they can do that for $5 million. Max Stassi is slated to make 7.5 next year on a club option. There is a $500,000 buyout. So you buy that out. The question then becomes, where else do you trim the money? And the chances are they're contracts that might be immovable. And they're also people who like provide a little bit of talent, which like is really all the White Sox have at this point.
Well, you'll non-tender Nicky Lopez, who will be making close to $5 million, I think, in arbitration. Yeah. So see ya. And also, I do want to say though, like I think the trimming payroll part is a little bit misleading, just from the perspective that there's financial commitments that are made this year. Like their payroll's kind of high this year when you factor in all of the players, even some of them that weren't really active or playing for them. But I also do think that, like, could it be that substantial of a loss in revenue? It said that they went from 24th to 27th in average attendance. So that was from 21,405 to 17,910. But there's also no way that they were averaging 17,910 fans. Like, you would know better than me. Is there a large number of like Chicago corporate, like just season tickets,
bundles,
like bought out areas
I'm
there?
sure. So you always account for season tickets when you report an attendance number. And I don't know. The pictures can be deceiving because there are a lot of people, and I've never really been one of these people because I buy them at like day of. But there are a lot of people that still exist that buy tickets about a month in advance and can't move them, like put them on the resale market. These tickets that you see on the resale market, they count towards the attendance. So that is beneficial there. The number is always going to be bigger than who actually shows up. In terms of who actually shows up, them in Oakland had to be bottom two in Major League Baseball this year. Had to.
Yeah,
So
I'm with you. So that's the interesting aspect of it. And then in terms of like total payroll allocation, I mean, the White Sox were 18th in Major League Baseball. So you're 18th in payroll allocation, and you're the worst team in the modern era. There's no reason to really spend next year. And I'm not validating it. Like, we will be the first to pile on a team not spending, but like it just doesn't really make sense next year anyways, from just like a viability standpoint. You want to set yourself up for success moving forward, play your young guys anyways.
right.
So just even if they sign some guys, they're still going to be, I think, down in payroll from last year or from this year, because I mean, just naturally there's going to be plenty of guys coming off of the books. So I mean, they've retained some salary on certain guys. So like, I don't know what the exact breakdown is on like a Eloy Jimenez and what that looks like, but I know that that'll clear up some money for them as well. Like, do you know what the breakdown was with Eloy, how much they retained? Because I think ultimately it's just a club option for 16 next year that the Orioles will just decline, and then they go from there. And remember, like, Eloy was making, what was it, 10 million
They
in
retained
2023.
12. The retained number on Eloy was 12 for this year. Leori Garcia made $5.5 million this year from the White Sox. I mean, Martin Maldonado got 4. Clevenger got 4. They got, Kopech
But I mean, like
1.9.
12. So think about this, just coming off the books, like surely is the 12 that you had this year with Eloy, and then you've got another, 5-ish from Nicky Lopez. That's
Right.
17. You couldn't move Andrew Benintendi if you attached every prospect you have. But then what was and then Makata's base salary this year to just barely play
Moncada's was
in AAA?
24.8.
24.8. So naturally there you just trimmed almost 40 million dollars, right?
In essence, the 2024 payroll total is 134. The 2025 payroll total, as it stands right now, accounting for Stassi's 7.5 and accounting for Moncada's 25. This is not accounting for arbitration, guys, but it's at 65.6.
Yeah.
So, like, in
So
terms of money that they have committed, it's really just Luis Robert and Andrew Benintendi.
so cutting payroll just really means like not in signing $80 million AAV worth of free agents. So that's why I thought that headline was a little misleading. But it does make you think though, if the focus really is to cut payroll and they really need to cut, does that put a little bit more urgency on a Luis Robert Jr. trade, who, it's still a really affordable contract, but he's going to be the second highest paid player on the team at 12 and a half. Do you move Robert in the offseason? I don't think it makes too much of a difference because if you move him at the deadline, you're still going to save plenty of money and you could get more return there. So I was thinking about it. We talked about it earlier. Like at first, my initial thought was, okay, maybe there is more urgency to move a Luis Robert Jr., but I don't know if there is because of how much money they're going to clear up from being able to decline the option on Moncada, being able to clear off the 3 million from Soroka and Clevenger and the 5 million from Nicky Lopez. If they really wanted to, they could non-tender Andrew Vaughn at potentially $4 million it'll probably make this coming year. Like there's a lot of money to be saved kind of left and right. So I think it doesn't really impact how they're going to approach the Luis Robert situation, but it does at least make it a little bit interesting to see how they approach that.
I could see them moving him this offseason. I'm trying to think about the way that Chris Getz could look at the whole Luis Robert scenario because this year was incredibly underwhelming compared to what you got in 2023.
And also it's 15 million next year, excuse me,
Yeah,
for Robert.
15 next year and then 17.1 for Benintendi. Benintendi question to follow. Luis Robert wise, though, I think you could be looking at 25 as running the risk of having his value drop even more.
Yeah.
Because what if he gets hurt again? What if he has a 670 OPS again?
Well, that's why I said move him at the deadline, man.
Yeah, but so at next year's deadline, I'm worried pre-deadline, you run the risk of this guy goes into July 1 with a 665 OPS and he's missed 40 games already.
Yeah.
You get really nervous versus I think in the offseason, teams are not going to forget because teams do their homework when they're trading for a superstar talent like Luis Robert. They're going to do their homework and they know that he's, very unavailable and he's coming off of a rough year. But I think it's an easier pitch on, hey, we're 1 year removed from this guy being a top 3, top 2 center fielder in all of Major League Baseball. Like this guy was, I think, consensus better than Michael Harris coming into the 2024 season.
Yeah, and you could say, hey, he was banged up. I mean, look at how miserable this season was for us. Right. He still played 100 games for the second time in his big league career, assuming he plays 9 more the rest of the way here. He still stole 20 plus bags. He still hit 14 home runs. Get him into a competitive environment, he's going to play better. I think that's a lot easier to say when you're just removing the season that was the most miserable season we've seen in decades. But if he struggles again, to your point, in the first half of next year, even though they're going to be miserable next year, it becomes kind of like, okay, well, what's going on here? So I'm with you. You could potentially get a little bit more value out of this thing if he really balls out, but he still is so valuable and you're going to get a haul. So I think if you get a little too greedy, you could end up with less. So I agree. I think that now, even with the payroll side of things, it makes it even more interesting. I don't think they need to, though, because they can, they're going to clear off enough money as is. But if the real goal is to get that payroll as low as possible, it's even
Yeah.
more incentive to trade him. But I even think beyond the money situation, I do agree with you. Like you're running a risk here
Yeah.
of potentially, having
Depleting
him
value even more.
hurt his value from on two fronts. Either he doesn't perform or he gets hurt. Versus if he's performing really well, I don't know how much more his value is going to go up. Everyone knows how good he is. So
Right.
I think there's a lot more risk than reward there in terms of,
Holding
how
him.
his value could trend one way or another.
Yeah. My last White Sox thing, I can't believe we're spending 10 minutes on McCovey Cove Dave and 10 minutes on the White Sox. But like
Yeah.
that's what happens in
If
baseball.
you're still with us,
Yeah. If you're still with us, one more question. Is Andrew Benintendi the most immovable contract in baseball at this point? He's making 17.1. I think it's 4 more years of control after this, maybe 3.
it's got to be, right? I
I would
mean,
think so.
he has 17 homers this year. Good for a negative 0.6 F4. My goodness. My goodness. That is so bad.
I don't think anybody's taking him on, even if the White Sox are like, hey, we'll pay it down to 5.
He's not even worth the 40 spot. Like,
I know.
I don't even think he's worth the 40-man spot.
I
Because
know.
he's a horrible defender. So there's legitimately almost no value. I mean, there is negative value if you value F4.
Yeah.
So I think it is the most immovable contract. Unless I'm forgetting one off the top of my head, there might be like some reliever that we haven't seen throw in a while. That's
Yeah,
just
like
brutal.
Corbin's up after this year, so it's not Pat Corbin anymore. And hell, Pat Corbin's like available.
Yeah, I would way rather have Pat Corbin.
Oh,
Not even close, to be honest.
oh.
Even if it was 3 years ago.
Yeah,
If all things are the same, give me the Pat Corbin deal. At least he eats innings.
probably Benintendi and Chris Bryant at this point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Chris Bryant's got to take the cake.
I think so.
Yeah, Chris Bryant takes the cake. But yeah, that's the two. I
It's
would
up
say.
there.
And then
That's
and then
crazy.
and Javi Baez.
That hits you in the gut, man. We got 2 Cubs and a White Sox. That's insane.
And then what about Rendon?
Rendon. Rendon is number 1 because he also just stinks.
For 2025 and beyond, Rendon's 2 years, 76 million.
Ah,
Chris Bryant's 4 years, 108. That one wins
that's
to me.
yeah.
That one wins by a lot. And then Javi Baez is 3 years, 73 million. It's Chris Bryant comfortably. Which contract would you rather have? Javier Baez, 3 years, 73 million. Or what was the Benintendi contract?
Benintendi, let me pull this up.
Because 3 years, 73 million for Javi Baez, who still will play a decent shortstop, versus whatever's left on the deal for Andrew Benintendi, which
Benintendi, 34 plus 15 is 49. 3 for 49. So 3 for 17 for Javi, or 3 for 73 for Javi, or 3 for 49 for Benintendi. I'd probably eat Javi before Benintendi.
Yeah, but like that's 20 million. Like if you're getting 0 from both those guys or close to it, I might save the 20 million. So that's really interesting. But the point stands, it's one of the worst.
Yeah, it's
one of the worst.
Definitely one of the worst. So you got Bryant, Rendon, Baez, and Andrew Benintendi. Let's go to some good baseball. Nick Yorke is up with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Yorke was acquired at the deadline, the day before the deadline, in a 1-for-1 swap from the Red Sox for Quinn Priester. Priester we talked about at length on the call-up on Friday, but Priester has kicked it into a new gear, especially with the slider since joining Worcester. And Yorke has kicked it into a new gear offensively. We've talked about it. Like this could absolutely be a mutually beneficial deal. Yorke in 40 games with Indianapolis slashed 355, 431, 507. 40 games, this guy had 17 doubles. He was hitting the ball to all fields. And there was a point, like a 2-week stretch, where he was putting the ball 105 to right center every single night. It was clockwork. He was killing. It looked a lot like Nick Gonzalez before he got the all fields thing back, where it was, wow, you're just driving the ball the other way at will. I would love to see him pull the ball in the air a little bit more.
Yeah, he definitely needs to do that a little bit more.
Right. But at the end of the day, I saw this guy play a decent shortstop, actually, for the first time in his professional career, a decent third base for the first time in his professional career, a decent center field for the first time in his professional career. Saw him play right for the first time in his professional career. He was a second baseman before this year.
Yeah.
And then it was second and a little bit of left. And now it's like, wow, you're playing everywhere. And he's up in the big leagues now. I think this is going to be a fun hitter to watch. I
Yeah.
do.
And they need them all, right? They need as many as they can get and add to the fold there. What I like is it seems like the further that Nick Yorke has gotten away from that senior high school shoulder surgery, the more comfortable he's been defensively, especially just from a throwing perspective. And the fact that he's gone from like second baseman to a guy that can maybe plug in all over, I mean, that really helps his value too, because I mean, we've seen this guy can swing it. Definitely needs to pull the ball in the air a little bit more to attain that power ceiling. But what we saw here, I think, is that he can hit a lot of doubles and be productive that way. And in those 40 games, as you mentioned, 17 doubles. So the EVs are strong. 105 mile per hour, 90th percentile is above average at the big league level. He's made plenty of contact. His approach is solid. Like I think this could be a solid big league hitter here. And I think Priester is going to be a solid back end of the rotation arm with the way he's trending as well. We talked about this kind of being a win-win deal, but I like that Yorke's getting an opportunity here. Would have needed to be added to the 40 man, being a 2020 draftee. So makes sense to just get him this opportunity now, see how he performs and see how he fits into the picture going into next year. But the fact that he can play multiple spots, given how limited the Pirates have been offensively, makes me feel pretty confident that he's going to be able to find a way to stay in the lineup a little bit more consistently. The fact that he can maybe plug in a short, I got to watch the video. It's short, but if you say it looks passable, then the fact that he can plug in it short, he can plug in and right. We'll see how center comes along. That could be huge if he develops there a little bit to plug in out there. Because you look at the ball club, like O'Neal Cruz, you're not playing that guy against lefties next year. You're not doing it. So he can pick up, the short side of the platoon there. And I think there's a lot of different things that he could potentially do and fill in. So if he can play all three outfield spots passably, and then second and short in a pinch, like that's a valuable player. And of course he's got to keep hitting, but that part seems to be taking care of itself now over the last few months.
They found two of them at the deadline, man. Like Billy Cook is coming into his own in the big leagues right now, and Nick Yorke is now joining him there. So the fact that, they went and got Isaiah Kiner Falefa and Brian De La Cruz, and that is really when like the skid materialized. Like that was not sexy in terms of the 2024 season, but they found two bats that seem to be big league caliber bats moving forward at the deadline, and they're the two that you were not expecting in Yorke and Cook.
And I'll tell you this, there's no chance that Nick Yorke is a worse outfielder than Brian De La Cruz already.
No chance.
So,
No
so
chance.
from that point alone, like he could end up just being a better left field option for them.
And to be honest, dude, Brian Reynolds, like there's no chance that Yorke is worse than Brian Reynolds at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll say like McCutchen, if McCutchen is back, he'll be the DH. I know Reynolds has been asked about some first base reps. That would be a very interesting offseason development to see Brian Reynolds move to first and open up one of those corner outfield spots.
Yeah. I think that'd be great.
I think it'd be awesome because that bat's legit, man. That bat made him an all-star, but in the corner, it's a rough watch. We're going to get to one of the stars in Major League Baseball on the hill, in all likelihood being done for the year. Before that, quick break. The last 48 to 72 hours of the Tyler Glasnow news has just sucked. Setback in his rehab, setback in his recovery from dealing with really an undisclosed like elbow, forearm, arm thing. We learned elbow sprain. And there was like a fascinating timeline that followed all of this. Fabian Ardaya, who covers the Dodgers for The Athletic, said Tyler Glasnow, this was on Sunday afternoon. Tyler Glasnow declined comment when approached by reporters last night, said he would be right back. Glasnow doesn't have a locker today in Atlanta. So on Saturday, he said he would be right back. And then on Sunday, his locker had been cleaned out. Then Dave Roberts was asked about where Tyler Glasnow went after Roberts said that he was, quote, highly unlikely to pitch again this season due to his sprained right elbow. Roberts said, quote, I don't know where he flew to, but he's not with the team. No. So it sucks. And let's get that out of the way. Like in terms of the baseball thing for the Dodgers, this blows that the guy that you just gave $130 million to this offseason is dealing with injury and availability concerns that plagued him in Tampa and plagued him in Pittsburgh. It's getting redundant, I'd say. It's becoming a pattern with Glasnow in terms of lack of availability, and that is probably pissing him off, especially after signing an $130 million extension. I
Yeah.
do not blame him one bit for getting up and leaving. But the other point that I saw in regards to Glasnow, and there were a couple people on the beat that said something like, after ducking the media for 2 days, Glasnow is no longer here in Atlanta. The one thing that I will say on that front is, no matter how frustrating it is, you did sign that $130 million contract in a place
Yeah.
like Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and you know that you have as much media presence as any organization aside from the New York Yankees. I'd say that the Dodgers and the Red Sox are probably co-twos behind the Yankees when it comes to media presence around you at every moment. I don't blame reporters for wanting Glasnow to speak with them. I don't blame Glasnow for not wanting to speak with reporters, but I feel like there was some weird wire crossing thing that could paint Glasnow as a bad guy in this situation. And what I would say is, hold that for now.
Yeah.
I understand that this was like an immature thing to not meet with reporters, but also know that he's probably in a shit spot right now because
Probably as
he's
bad as he's been, as bad as he's been in terms of like, because this was the year that I think you saw him kind of push to a new innings threshold. We'd never seen him go more than 120. He's at 134. Yeah, the Dodgers are the World Series favorites. He's a big part of that. The staff had been decimated. A lot of money was invested in him being able to kind of headline that staff along with Yamamoto and then of course Ohtani coming along. But and there's probably just a new deal of pressure. You talk about the media side, of course, in Tampa, you don't have to worry about that at all. And when he
and
was
in
up in
Pittsburgh to
Pittsburgh,
start his career, man. When Pittsburgh he
yeah,
was struggling, like, you don't have to deal with that
didn't
really.
matter. Didn't matter. And it was a trade that immediately people weren't really worried about the return because it was like, how did they give up that much? There wasn't the pressure of like, oh, I need to make this trade look good for the Rays. Like, doesn't matter. So, it was pretty low pressure. The thing with the Glasnow is I've actually seen a lot of clips of him doing interviews and, podcasts and things like that. And he's so comfortable, so well spoken. He's actually really good
Yeah.
in those situations. So, I think when he probably feels like he can't be himself and whatever, he just doesn't want to do it. And I get that. But yeah, everything's just going to be under a different microscope in LA. And the old Irish goodbye is probably not the best way to go about it.
Right.
And I think again, it's just kind of the difference of experience. I mean, you see Walker and what he's had to kind of endure this year. And by the way, so awesome to see him throw again really well on Sunday Night Baseball against a Braves offense that had been cooking the
Yeah.
last two games. But Walker, he didn't. I don't want to speak for him, but I mean, just him being a human being, I can speak for human beings. When you're going through this, and this was probably the toughest stretch of his professional career, given it's second Tommy John coming back, not feeling like yourself, and you're getting peppered with questions. He answered them all. He always sat there, even when he had to go, take some time off and whatever. Did they give all the specifics? No, you can give your answers the way you want to give them. Just don't fully duck it. They even asked Walker about free agency, and he's like, free agency isn't for people with 6 ERAs, and like, just wearing it. And I get it, but with Glasnow here, I think this injury probably hurts a little bit more because depending on what it is, this is could be a second major elbow issue, right? Where,
Yeah.
I think that probably is weighing pretty heavily on him right now. But to your point, he got his bag. So, you have that financial security, and with that bag comes the obligation of the media side. So
That's the thing. You have your financial security, but you also have that burden where you may feel like you are a bigger absence to the LA Dodgers than another guy that, like, Gavin Stone's on the shelf right now working his way back from a shoulder thing. Gavin Stone was throwing like an all-star. But I will tell you, because of the financial commitment to Tyler Glasnow, that one hurts more for Glasnow and hurts more for the Dodgers than a Gavin Stone who's working his way back. And that's no knock on Gavin Stone again. And those guys have had, yeah, I don't want to say comparable seasons, because when Glasnow has been on the mound, Glasnow has been awesome, awesome.
yeah,
And Stone has been awesome too. But at the end of the day, like, there is a different gravity when you say the name Tyler Glasnow in the Dodger clubhouse. Like, that's our
yeah,
$135 million man. I think Yamamoto is feeling some of these things right now. I wouldn't blame him one bit, because he was the $325 million pitcher that all of a
yeah,
sudden was on the shelf 2 months in to his, big league career, to his major league career. So I just think there's a different gravity that comes with being a big money guy in a big market. And shit, like it would piss me off too if I were
Yeah.
Glass now. But all I'm saying is like a little bit of grace, I think right now would be good. And when he's ready to talk, he'll talk. I just
Yeah.
wish he didn't operate during those 42 hours like he did.
Yeah, and you remember when he underwent his like before undergoing Tommy John surgery,
Tommy,
maybe it
he
was
talked
after.
about the sticky
He,
substance ban.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then it was Major League. He really felt like it was Major League Baseball's kind of fault on that front too. So yeah, I'm just interested to see what he says and when he comes back, and hopefully it's not as bad as we think. But you always know a manager's frustrated when they don't really like shield the guy too much,
Right.
right? Where he says, I don't know where he flew to. He could have just said, oh, he's taking some time to himself. And we'll circle back with him in the coming days. But I don't know where he flew off to. Is Dave Roberts' way of saying, yeah, he just disappeared on us. And I think that does say a lot though, because if he thought that Glasnow deserved a little bit more grace there, he probably would have protected him a bit more than just the hey, I don't know where the hell he flew to. Like that kind of did air him out a little bit.
No doubt. And Dave Roberts never does that. And I will say
Mm.
that might just be this season catching up to him.
I
I
wonder what's going on in that clubhouse a little bit.
I
I
know.
can't lie. I
I
can't lie.
totally wonder. I totally wonder.
I
And
think
I'll tell you that, yeah,
a lot of stars in one place, a lot of pressure, but also a lot of crazy headlines between the Ohtani thing. There's everything going on. A lot of players that are individually, I think dealing with a lot. I'm very curious what it's like in there. And this Glass situation didn't really make me feel any better about what's
yeah.
going on in the larger clubhouse situation either.
I've never really understood the Dave Roberts hot seat thing because at the end of the day, I do think the postseason is a bit more of a crapshoot than in really any other sport. I understand that he has struggled to win the big one that is not 2020. But at the end of the day, this guy is the best regular season manager. And a lot of that is roster construction. There's no
Yeah,
doubt about that. Like you have to look at Dave Roberts along with Andrew Friedman in tandem. But
yeah,
I
yeah.
will say this guy deserves a freaking medal for what he's gone through this year. And seeing the video reaction to him when Mookie Betts got hit in the hand, and he's like, God damn, again. Yamamoto going down, Glasnow going down, Clayton Kershaw with the toe thing, Bueller, Bobby Miller, everybody, man. Like Freddie Freeman, even with the fracture in his finger. There has been something.
You got to answer
Every
Ohtani questions with his arm all the freaking time. You got
dude.
to. It's just it's
He,
nonstop.
and he has
Muncy was hurt
been
for most of the year.
exactly.
Yeah,
He has been the consummate pro. He, in terms of public facing this year as a big league manager, is exactly what I want. I
yeah,
think he's the perfect guy to manage this clubhouse. And you said, like, I'm curious about the clubhouse dynamic with that many stars. There are very few people that I think could handle that. And I think Dave Roberts is on the very, very short list of
and
people that can handle it.
Joe Torre, and then maybe like one or two others, and that's about it. So
That's about
it's
it.
a very short list. Before I forget, because it's just two things that came in as we were recording here. Lindor's MRI seemed to come back clean, which is
Good.
phenomenal news. I just saw that from Jake Mintz and Cespedes Family Barbecue, sharing that from the presser. Lindor said he's hoping to be back soon.
Good.
So I think they should take some time here, obviously, and it's more important to have him for the last handful of games than potentially the postseason. But you also want him back pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That's great news. And then another really nice thing that also kind of plays into the same race here. Ozzy Albies for the Braves is scheduled to play rehab games with AAA Gwinnett Tuesday and Wednesday.
Cool.
Could join the Braves in Miami for the series that starts Friday.
Cool.
That's from David O'Brien as well, the Braves beat writer for the Athletics. So two stories, two like updates that you love to see. Very, very happy that Lindor can get back and play. And then, for a Braves team that's starting to look better offensively, I mean, Ozzy Albies would be a godsend for them offensively.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like the Mets are closer to putting their best foot forward than the Braves are. And Albies returning is not the Braves putting their best foot forward because they are still without Austin Riley and Ronald Acuna Jr. has been out. Like the Braves are working with a hand tied behind their back. There's no doubt about this. But the Mets, if they can do this in a year that was tabbed as a rebuild, like they're going to do it because of their MVP candidate, because of the
Yeah,
guy that is going to be the consensus. What, there are 30 first place votes. I don't know how many he's going to get, but every non-first place vote, he's going to get a
it's going.
second place vote.
It's got to go to Lindor, yeah. And
Yeah,
so, in his words, 3 to 5 days or 2 to 3 depends on how my back reacts. So, very
I
happy about that.
love that. That is absolutely phenomenal. And I think Mets fans deserve
Yeah,
Lindor for the home stretch.
my goodness, they do. Yeah,
And
that would have just been too depressing.
they brought Grimace back out to the ballpark last night, which is
Yeah,
huge. They're looking to kickstart something.
got to get it going.
Gotta get it going again. I did want to dovetail off of that with the other report, and it's the Ohtani thing right now. Did you see Dave Roberts said essentially escalated Ohtani's chances to pitch in October from 0 to non-zero? We
I
saw him throwing off the bullpen the night after he got to 40-40. I think it would be a bad decision.
I agree.
I do. I think it would be incredibly rushed. I wonder how much of this is Ohtani trying to work his rehab at warp speed because he sees what's happening with Glasnow and
Yeah,
because he sees what's happening with the Gavin Stone. But that, like, I saw that report and I know that it fires every single baseball fan up. It's like, oh my God, we can see this guy do both in the postseason. That's amazing. I, being the curmudgeon that I am, and I think the realist that I am is like,
realist. I think
this
this
is
is realist.
yeah, like this is just not the best thing for Shohei Ohtani if he wants to throw 180 innings next year and get Cy Young votes.
It's year one of a 10-year deal.
Yeah.
And it's year one of this new phase or new chapter of Otani's career that I think could solidify him as the greatest to ever do it. And that's all I'm thinking about. It would be great to see the Dodgers win the World Series this year. I think it's become abundantly clear that it's going to take more than Ohtani pitching to win the World Series. It's going to take this team being healthy and other arms being available. A recovering Ohtani on a pitch limit and all these things is not. I just don't think is going to make or break the World Series for you. If you're the Dodgers, it's going to be the 48 other arms that are hurt and who's available and how those guys are throwing and what that all looks like. So the idea of bringing Ohtani back, I think, a little bit prematurely, and then throwing him into max effort, max adrenaline, push the body to the brink. I just don't get it. And it doesn't mean that he's throwing 100 pitches, but even if he's throwing 20, he's going to have adrenaline and he's going to be throwing the ball harder than maybe he ever really has, depending on how the body's feeling. I think that shouldn't be done here. It should be done. And it's not just that, it's the fact that if you don't rush him back here, he has a full off season to really, really get himself exactly where he wants to be. And then he has low stress, easy kind of way to ease his way in with spring training, with games in April and May, and you go from there. And guess what? The 2025 Dodgers are going to be a World Series favorite as well. And you know who they're going to need on the mound? Shohei Ohtani. So it almost feels like you're plugging a leak now and can create a larger, hole in the boat later on. And I just don't really, I think it's short-sighted. So I look, if all doctors say he's good to go, they know more than me, sure. Yeah. But the idea of bringing a guy back and then putting him into max leverage, highest adrenaline, like he's going to cut loose, is going to push that arm. I just don't love that.
And hand up, like, I don't know the precedent to brace recovery at this point. Like, I know Tommy John. He did not get Tommy John. He's not throwing with a new ligament. He's not learning this new ligament in there. He's learning a refurbished ligament in there. It's a brace. And the brace is a relatively new procedure. I don't think there's enough precedent to warrant him doing this. And it's not like, oh, well, Strider got the brace. Is Strider going to pitch in October? Strider got the brace in April. Ohtani got the brace in November. I don't know the difference. I don't know enough about the timeline to the brace. Frankly, I don't think I've talked to somebody that has gotten the brace yet.
Yeah.
I'd be very.
All I know, I would say all I know is that this was not the initial timeline. And now it's becoming a possibility,
right?
Which tells me that it's pushing it a little bit.
No doubt.
That's all I need to know. I'm not a doctor. I ain't pushing it. I'm playing safe with my $700 million man who has the potential to legitimately be one of the greatest or the greatest to ever
The
do it,
greatest.
I want to see a decade more of Ohtani. I don't want to see Ohtani pushing it in the postseason this year and seeing what, like if he's good, he's good. But again, I want to err on the side of caution here.
I'm 1000% with you. Part of me wishes that Peter was on the pod too, where he could offer like the non-realist pessimist perspective. And it's like, guys,
Yes.
it's fucking Shohei Ohtani. You remember the WBC?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yes.
So I hear it. I know that everybody is yelling. It's like, it's Shohei Ohtani. He can do both in the postseason. Realist wins, I think, here for me. And I'm not thinking twice about it. Want to wrap with the player options. You've got these bad boys queued up. We have, I think, 10 notable around that ballpark.
Yeah.
And we want to go
some
through.
player, some club. And I'm just going to tell you, just tell me yes or no.
Okay.
But and I'm gonna mix in some quick obvious ones just because I think it's just interesting. Like a Brandon Lau, $10.5 million. Even the Rays are gonna pick that bad boy up.
Yes.
And so we'll start with club. I'll just walk through a few, and then we'll go player option as well.
Okay.
The no brainers, by the way, Devin Williams, $10.5 million, no brainer.
On a club.
On a club. These are all club. I'll tell you when we transition.
Okay.
Anthony Rizzo, 17 million club option. I think that's declined.
He's got a 617 OPS this year in 83 games, and Ben Rice is in Scranton right now. I think it's declined because you realize that you might have something in Ben Rice.
Yes, and that money goes directly to the Juan Soto offer.
Yeah.
In terms of AAV, that makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Marcelo Ozuna at 16 million.
Oh, easiest yes
Easy
ever.
Eugenio Suarez at 15 million.
So, yes.
Yes.
If you asked me 2 months ago, firm no. Now, firm yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But I agree. I think it's a firm yes. Craig Kimbrell at 13 million.
No.
No, I'm with you. Especially when the Orioles can put that money towards, potentially getting some more pitching. Kyle Gibson at 12.
Yes, there is something to be said about reliability and availability, and he is reliable and available, and he has been so for a long time, and it's boring as shit, and I know that, and I'm the first one to admit that there is nothing that gets me going about a Kyle Gibson start, but at the end of the day, I want that guy on my team. Sometimes boring is really good for a Major League Baseball team, and I think he is the perfect example, no offense, Kyle Gibson, of a really good, boring baseball player.
How about his teammate Lance Lynn at 11?
Yes.
Done deal.
Yeah. Done deal.
Jorge Polanco at 12 for the Mariners. He's been better in the second half, but the Mariners, like that money matters, and we're going to get to a player option that is going to get picked up here by Mitch Haniger for 17 million. So they're already held hostage there. They're going to be paying deeper into ARB with Arozarena. Some of their pitchers are going to start to be hitting arbitration.
Yeah.
I think it's a no. And optically, you don't have to worry as much. It's not like the prospects that you gave up are doing much. I think it's a no. I'm curious what you think.
I think it's a no because your fan base is already soured on him. And I know that you should be making these decisions based on on-field performance, but they were quick to pull the plug on the Colton Wong thing. And I think they should be quick to pull the plug on the Jorge Polanco thing because you owe it to your fan base to keep trying to find the right guy. And I think your fan base is now convinced that Jorge Polanco is not the right guy.
And 12 million is a lot, I think, for the Mariners. Like that's money that can go towards the right guy. And I think, even with the better performance, just isn't looking like he's that right guy for them. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss another one. Like there's some no-brainers. Freddie Peralta at 8 million is a legitimate no-brainer.
That's going to go down as one of the better contracts in baseball in this generation.
Yeah, Seranthony Dominguez at 8 million. I think that's a no. He's been so much better though with the Orioles since coming over.
I would say if you decline the club on Kimbrel, I think you accept the club on Dominguez.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
Because Kimbrel struggles in the seventh. Dominguez can throw the seventh, and Yennier Cano can throw the eighth, and Bautista back can throw the ninth. You would pay Kimbrel the 13 to throw the ninth and he won't be doing that next year because
Yeah.
Didn't Bautista get the brace, or did he
Yeah,
get full blown Tommy John?
he's throwing. I think I don't know what I might have got the brace regardless. I don't know the timeline, but I do know that he's already thrown in the pen, like throwing pens, and like they
Yeah.
haven't fully ruled out him potentially coming back in the late postseason.
There you go. So with Bautista handling the ninth, you have that ninth inning guy. I'm not paying Kimbrel 13, but I will pay Dominguez 7 because I think there are a lot of very valuable seventh, eighth inning guys that are making 7.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. Player options are a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
Blake Snell at 38.5.
No, I think what he has done, and I know that it hasn't been as headline grabbing recently as it was in the middle months in that slog right around the All-Star break and just post All-Star break. I think Snell has earned himself the opportunity to go get a 5-year deal.
Yep. But the AAV will probably be less than 38.5, but you're guaranteeing yourself 100 plus million. God forbid anything happens health wise. He's 32 next year. Yeah, I think he opts out of that 38.5 with the way that he is thrown. Michael Wacha, 16 million with the Royals.
I think he opts out and goes and gets 25 across 2 years. I think he gets a 2-year, $50 million deal.
At least. And what's interesting is, with the QO being close to 21 million, like if he opts out, I would offer him if he hasn't received it before, I'd offer him the QO.
Absolutely.
Because I would happily take him at 1 year, 20 plus. So him knowing that, I think it's almost surely going to be an opt out. Mitch Haniger is opting in at $17.5 million. I love Mitch, but man, this is a good one. Sean Manaea, $13.5 million player option. Manaea has been really solid this year. Really, really solid. I don't know what teams are, going to think of what he's done, but this is a talented guy. He's had good stretches in the past, and he's never been like a full-fledged disaster, which is why I think even if he regresses a little bit, I think this is an opt-out as well.
He turns 33 in February. I opt out.
Yep.
I opt out.
Nick Martinez is an opt-out at 12 million as well.
He's a total opt-out. One more thing on Manaea. He made 27 appearances out of the Giant pen last year. If they started him, he has been a full-time starter 3 of the last 4 years. Yep. 179 innings, 158 innings. He was limited to 117 because he was working out of the bullpen. And then this year, 164, going to get north of 170. So, he's proven availability at that point. Manaea opts out because he can show that. Nick Martinez, easiest opt out.
The way he's throwing, no brainer. Hunter Renfroe, last one on the player option side, $7.5 million player option with the Royals. He's going to be 33 next year. That's a really tough one. I don't really know.
I say he opts in. And the reason I say that is because he provides next to no defensive value right now, aside from a hose of an arm. Mm-hmm. But he also may love where Kansas City is at. I'm thinking 7 there or 8 elsewhere. Part of me is thinking 7 in Kansas City is a probably good move.
And I don't think there's a better team or even just a remotely contending team for next year that's going to give him more playing time.
Right.
So from that perspective as well, I think it's probably an opt-in, but I could also just see with the way the market is trended, like that's so cheap nowadays.
Yeah.
That, it could end up being one of those situations where he still feels like he can go get more. I do agree. I think he opts in. One more just fun development is the Nate Eovaldi situation. Mm-hmm. And which, by the way, we're talking about TJ and double TJ and all that stuff. For Nate Eovaldi to hit, he's trending really close to it, to hit a potential innings threshold that would make his option vest for 2025 is pretty crazy, pretty awesome. So the innings threshold was if he threw 300 innings between 2023 and 2024, I think it would become a player option, if I'm not mistaken. I want to make sure I have that right.
Yes,
and then
becomes a player.
And then he earned $1.5 million in 2023 for the innings he threw. So he got $750,000 for 130 innings and then 140 innings. So that was pretty cool to see too. He's just been darn solid again. How close is he to the 300 inning mark?
He's 4 innings away, I think.
So he's going to hit it.
He's going to hit. He's
So
got
that
two
becomes
more
a player
starts.
option. So if that becomes a player option, do you pick that up if you're Eovaldi at 20? I
No.
probably hit the open market.
You know what I think he could do? Because he's a Texas guy. I think he's from Alvin, Texas. Do I have that right? Um, he's a Texas guy. What I could see happening is decline the player option, rework with Texas on a 2-3
Yes,
deal.
it's exactly what I think happens too.
Yeah.
And
One
I think
more
we'd love to have that.
vesting. Did you see the other vesting?
No.
Ryan Presley, 50 appearances in both 23 and 24 turns into a $14 million player option.
Ooh,
He hit it.
I think he's picking that up, I think.
I would think so too. He's showing signs of age this year for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he picks that up.
Yeah.
He's like he's gone from like closer to I think like fine 7th inning guy.
Yeah.
So that's a nice bag for him too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be his last, big deal. Like pick up that 14, get 14 more and it's gonna push him over the top, I think, career earnings. That'll put him closer to like I think 70 million, which is pretty absurd.
Pretty great, man.
Yeah.
I
That's
love
all we
that.
got on the options front. It'll be fun. It's always fun to see. There's always some surprising non-tenders too, and things like that. So we'll see how that all goes. But seems like more than last year, we had more yeses than nos. So I
I
think,
think so. It's also a weak free agent class.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
part of me
But
is
it might be
thinking
weaker now that everyone's going to pick them up. So
it might be weaker, but I'm also thinking about and agents would have a better idea about this than me. I'm thinking about all these rights deals that are expiring, like all these TV and radio rights deals that are expiring. This is a fascinating offseason when it comes to RSN coverage of Major League Baseball teams, which in turn puts a lot of financials in limbo. And that it might be a good year for there to be a very thin free agent class. And the only team that's going to get financially screwed is whichever team pays Juan Soto. And if it's the Yankees, I don't feel bad one bit. And if it's the Mets, I feel even less bad, I think.
yeah, I agree.
So
It's gonna be fun though.
that's what we got. Every link you need is in the episode description. Again, subscribe to our new newsletter because it is the best thing going. If you like Morning Brew, it's that, but for baseball, and it's sick. So that's what we got. You got anything else?
That's all I got.
Easy. Don't be the aquatic Zach Hampel, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.